The sunset painted the sky in soft hues of orange and pink, waves rolling gently onto the shore. I swirled the last sip of my overpriced cocktail, laughing as Daniel recounted his latest dating disaster. It was the first real vacation I'd had in years, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Then my phone buzzed. I lazily glanced at the screen, expecting some useless notification, maybe a sale alert from a store I hadn't shopped at in months. Instead, a cold wave of panic swept over me. $55,000 withdrawn. I sat up so fast that my drink nearly tipped over. My brain scrambled for explanations. A glitch? A mistake? But deep down, I already knew. My stomach twisted into a knot. My mother, Bradley. I had given her access to my account years ago, back when I thought parents were supposed to be trustworthy. It was meant for emergencies, nothing more. And yet, my savings, the money I had meticulously set aside to open my own clinic, were gone. My fingers trembled as I called her. It rang and rang and rang. No answer. "Olivia? What's wrong?" Daniel asked, concern lacing his voice. I couldn't speak. My chest tightened as I dialed again. Nothing. A third time. Finally, she picked up. "What's going on?" she said, casual as ever, like she hadn't just ripped my future out from under me. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Where's my money?" A pause. Then, in a tone so nonchalant it made my blood boil, she said, "Oh, that. We bought Eric a car. He has a great job opportunity, and he can't exactly show up at a prestigious firm in public transport, can he?" I thought I misheard her. "You? What?" Bradley sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. "Olivia, you'll earn it back. You're a doctor. Money comes and goes, but this is important for Eric." The world around me blurred. My ears rang. I stood up so fast my chair screeched against the wooden deck. "I'm coming home." That night, I booked the earliest flight back. 4 more days of vacation? Ruined. But I didn't care. Because if my mother and brother thought they could take everything from me without consequences, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The moment my plane touched down, I felt the anger simmering beneath my skin. My body was exhausted, but my mind was sharp, fueled by rage and disbelief. I didn't waste time. I didn't go home to rest. I didn't even call Daniel. Instead, I went straight to my parents' house. As I pulled into the driveway, my breath hitched. There it was, a brand new luxury car, gleaming in the sunlight like a monument to their betrayal. My money, my hard-earned savings, sitting there in the form of leather seats and tinted windows. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. For a second, I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so utterly ridiculous. They had really done it. They had stolen from me and didn't even have the decency to act guilty. I stepped out, slammed the car door, and stormed inside. The sound of laughter hit me first light, carefree, like they didn't have a single worry in the world. I found them in the living room. My mother, Bradley, sipping her coffee like she hadn't just ruined my life. My brother, Eric, lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone without a care. "Oh, Olivia." Bradley smiled as if I had just come back from a shopping trip. "You're home early. How was your vacation?" I stared at her. Was this a joke? I turned to Eric. He didn't even look up. Then, in a voice that was far too calm for how I felt, I said, "Where is my money?" Bradley sighed, setting down her cup. "Olivia, don't be so dramatic. We didn't steal it. We used it for something important." Eric finally glanced up, rolling his eyes. "Relax, Olivia. You'll make more. It's not a big deal." I saw red. "Not a big deal?" My voice cracked. "I worked for that money for years. It was supposed to be my future." Bradley waved a dismissive hand. "Eric needs this, sweetheart. His job. He doesn't even have the job yet, does he?" I cut in, voice sharp. Silence. Eric avoided my gaze, suddenly very interested in his phone screen. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Unbelievable. You stole my savings for something that wasn't even certain?" Bradley had the audacity to look annoyed. "He will get it, Olivia. And when he does, he needs to look the part. Do you think they'd take him seriously if he showed up in a second-hand car?" I wanted to scream. The entitlement. The sheer arrogance. I turned on my heel and walked back toward the door. "Where are you going?" Bradley called. I didn't hesitate. "I'm taking the car back." That was when all hell broke loose. Before I even reached the keys on the counter, Eric shot up from the couch. "What the hell, Olivia? That's my car." Bradley was on her feet now, too. "Olivia, stop being ridiculous." I snatched the keys before they could react. "You didn't buy this car. I did, with my money, and I'm returning it. Eric lunged at me, trying to grab the keys from my hand. You can't do that. I yanked my arm away. Watch me. Bradley stepped in front of the door, arms crossed. You're not thinking rationally. The car is already paid for. Just let it go. I took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. You think I won't fight back? Her face twitched. I stared at her for a long moment, then shook my head. You have no idea what's coming. Then I walked out, keys in hand, and as I started the car and backed out of the driveway, ignoring their shouts, I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't over. The moment I pulled out of the driveway, my phone exploded with calls. Eric, Bradley, even some of our relatives, who I assumed had already been fed some twisted version of events. I ignored them all. I had bigger things to do. The drive to the dealership felt surreal. My heart pounded in my chest, anger and adrenaline fueling every turn of the wheel. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, Bradley's dismissive tone, Eric's entitled whining. They really thought they could steal from me and get away with it. Not a chance. I pulled into the dealership lot and marched inside. A salesman in a cheap suit greeted me with a fake smile. Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help? I need to return this car, I said, cutting him off. It was purchased with my money without my permission. The man blinked, his smile faltering. Do you have the bill of sale? My stomach dropped. No, my mother bought it, but with my money. I have the bank statement proving it. He frowned, typing something into his system. Okay, what's the name on the purchase? Bradley Carter. A few seconds passed as he scrolled through the records. Then his face changed a subtle shift, but enough for me to know something was wrong. Ma'am, he said carefully, turning the screen slightly so I could see. This vehicle is registered under Eric Carter. I stared at the screen, barely breathing. No, I said, my voice eerily calm. That's impossible. I paid for it. The salesman shifted uncomfortably. I understand, but legally, your brother is the owner. Only he can return it or sell it. I took a step back, the full weight of the betrayal settling over me like a lead blanket. They hadn't just stolen my money. They had made sure I couldn't take the car back. My phone buzzed again. This time, I picked up. You registered the car in your name? I said, my voice cold. There was a pause, then a laugh. A giggle. Duh, it's my car. I hung up immediately, gripping the steering wheel so tightly I thought it might snap. They really thought they had won. They had no idea who they were dealing with. By the time I got back to my apartment, my hands were still shaking, but my mind was racing. If they wanted to play dirty, I could play dirtier. I started making calls. First, my bank. Could I dispute the withdrawal? No, because I had given my mother access to my account. The transaction was technically authorized. Fine. Next, I reached out to some friends. Did anyone know a good lawyer? Most of them were just as shocked as I was, offering sympathy but no real solutions. But then, Sophia came through. I know someone, she said. He's aggressive. You'll like him. She sent me the number, and I called immediately. 2 rings. Then a deep voice answered. Tell me everything. I laid it all out. Every stolen dollar. The registration trick, the sheer audacity of it all. Linda listened carefully, and when I was done, she exhaled sharply. This isn't just a civil case. This could be fraud. I froze. Fraud? If your mother accessed your account under the pretense of financial management, but used it for an unauthorized purchase, it could be considered misrepresentation or financial abuse, Linda explained. It depends on intent. Do you have proof of their knowledge? I grinned. I had plenty. Text messages, bank statements, and the recorded phone call with Eric giggling about how it washes car. Linda didn't hesitate. We need to act fast. Do you want to handle this privately or make their lives hell? I didn't even need to think. Hell. Definitely hell. The next day, I went to my parents' house, but not alone. The moment I walked in, all conversation stopped. Bradley, Eric, and a few nosy relatives were gathered in the living room, no doubt talking about me. I leaned against the doorway and smirked. Say hello to my lawyer. Their faces drained of color as Linda stepped forward, her professional demeanor ice cold. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, she began, her voice steady. Your daughter has informed me of your unauthorized use of her funds. As it stands, this could constitute financial fraud, theft, and misrepresentation. If Olivia decides to pursue legal action, you could be facing serious consequences. Silence. Then Eric scoffed. She wouldn't do that. We're family. Linda let out a short laugh. Family doesn't steal $55,000. Bradley cleared her throat, her voice forced into a calm tone. Olivia, be reasonable. This is unnecessary. I crossed my arms. No, what's unnecessary is you thinking I'd let this slide, Linda continued, unbothered. We have options here. Olivia could take civil action, which would be costly and very public. Or, she paused for effect, we can resolve this immediately. The car needs to be sold and the money returned. Otherwise, we move forward with charges. Eric went pale. Bradley's lips pressed together so tightly they turned white. My mother, who had always been so confident, so in control, looked genuinely unsure for the first time in years. I let the silence stretch, then leaned in slightly and said, "You're screwed." Bradley exhaled sharply. "We're not selling the car." Linda shrugged. "All right, we'll see you in court." Panic flashed across my mother's face. Wait. Let's talk about this." Linda ignored her. "Olivia, I need you to document everything. Every text, every bank statement, every conversation. We need to prove intent." Eric jumped. "What does that mean?" I grinned. "It means," I said slowly, "I'm going to make your life very difficult." Then I walked out, leaving them sitting in the wreckage of their own disaster. I barely made it back to my apartment before my phone started blowing up again. First, it was Bradley, then Eric. Then some aunt I hadn't spoken to in years, no doubt roped in to guilt trip me into backing down. I let them all go to voicemail. I wasn't playing their game anymore. Instead, I followed Linda's advice to the letter. I documented everything, every text, every call, every screenshot of my bank transactions. I even recorded a voice memo detailing the timeline, making sure I didn't forget a single damn thing. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Daniel, sorting through the evidence. He glanced at one of Eric's texts and let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Why are you doing this to us?" he read aloud, shaking his head. "Olivia, I swear, your brother might actually be delusional." "Oh, trust me," I muttered. "I've known that for years." Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his jaw thoughtfully. "So what's next? You really gonna take them to court?" I stared at the pile of documents in front of me. Technically, I didn't have to. The mere threat of legal action had already put them on edge. But if I let this slide, it wouldn't end here. I exhaled sharply. "I'm filing the fraud report first thing in the morning," Daniel grinned. "Now that's the Olivia I know." By 9 a.m. the next day, I was at the DMV, requesting an official record of the car's purchase. The clerk gave me a skeptical look when I explained the situation, but after showing my bank statements and evidence of the unauthorized transaction, she nodded and typed something into her system. A few minutes later, she slid a document across the counter. "The car has been flagged for investigation. That means your brother won't be able to sell it, transfer it, or legally use it until this is resolved." I took the paper, barely suppressing a smirk. Perfect. By noon, I had frozen my bank account, ensuring that not a single cent more would be touched by my family ever again. By 3 p.m., I had filed an official police report for unauthorized use of funds. I hadn't pressed charges yet, but I wanted it on record, just in case. By 5 p.m., my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Bradley. I picked up. "You went to the police?" she hissed, skipping any form of greeting. I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Yep." "You locked the car?" Eric's voice screeched in the background. "Yep." "Olivia, what the hell are you doing?" Bradley's voice wavered between anger and panic. "This is getting out of hand," I laughed. "Oh, you think I'm the one taking this too far? You stole $55,000 from me. But sure, let's talk about how I'm the problem." She sighed, the frustration bleeding through the phone. "You're tearing this family apart over a car." "No," I corrected. "You did that the moment you decided your son's convenience was more important than my future." Bradley was quiet for a moment. Then, in a calculated, softer voice, she said, "We didn't think it would come to this, sweetheart." I nearly rolled my eyes. The fake concern was almost laughable. "You didn't think I'd fight back," I corrected again. Silence. Then Eric picked up the phone. "You ruined my life, Olivia," he whined. "I can't even drive my own car anymore." I let out a low chuckle. "Good." Then I hung up. The next morning, my phone exploded again, but this time, it wasn't just my family. Linda called first. "They tried to transfer the car to another name this morning," she said, amusement clear in her voice. "But since you filed that fraud report, the DMV flagged it. They're stuck." I nearly dropped my coffee. "You're kidding." "Oh, I wish," Linda said. "Also, you'll love this, they hired a lawyer." I choked on my drink. Excuse me? They're panicking, she said. Their lawyer called me, trying to negotiate. I blinked. And I told him to have his client sell the car and return your money, or we're taking this to court. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a slow breath. I had them cornered. They were finally realizing that they had messed with the wrong person. But then something happened that I didn't expect. That evening, Daniel's mother, Charlotte, called me. Olivia, she said, her voice unusually serious. Your father just showed up at my house. I nearly dropped my phone. What? He wants to meet you, she said. He says he wants to fix things. I pinched the bridge of my nose, exhaustion washing over me. After everything they had pulled, now they wanted to talk? Charlotte hesitated. I don't trust him, Olivia, but it's your decision. I exhaled slowly, my grip on the phone tightening. Bradley had spent days ignoring my calls, pretending this wasn't serious. Eric had spent every waking moment acting like the victim. And now, when they were completely out of options, when they were backed into a corner, now my father wanted to meet. He wasn't sorry, he was desperate, and I was about to find out why. I agreed to meet my father, but on my terms. No home field advantage for him, no fake sympathy from my mother, no entitled whining from Eric. I picked a neutral location, a small coffee shop near Daniel's place. Public enough to keep things civil, but private enough that I could walk out the second he started bullshitting me. When I arrived, my father, who had always been so put together, so in control, looked 10 years older. The stress of the last few days had eaten away at him, and for the first time, I saw it. He wasn't just nervous, he was scared. Good. He rubbed a hand down his face before sighing. Olivia, this has gone too far. I took a slow sip of my coffee. No, it hasn't gone far enough. He flinched but tried to recover quickly. Your mother is a wreck. Eric is devastated. Do you really want to drag this through the courts? Do you want to destroy this family over a misunderstanding? I let out a slow, disbelieving laugh. A misunderstanding? He leaned forward, lowering his voice. We didn't steal from you. You borrowed it, right? I cut in, voice dripping with sarcasm. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes. I tilted my head. So tell me, when exactly were you planning to return my 55 grand? He exhaled heavily, suddenly finding his coffee cup very interesting. I leaned back. Right. That's what I thought. For a long moment, he didn't speak. He just sat there, miserable, as if he actually expected me to pity him. Then, finally, he said something that sent a chill down my spine. If you take this to court, he admitted, we could lose the house. I blinked, caught off guard. What? He sighed, looking genuinely exhausted. The house is in bad shape financially. Legal fees, forced repayment. It could push us over the edge. I stared at him, processing. They weren't just struggling, they were drowning. And yet when I had worked my ass off for years to build a future for myself, to save every single dollar, I hadn't heard a word about it. Instead, they had gone behind my back, taken everything I had, and funneled it into a luxury car for Eric. A car that wasn't even necessary. I felt something bitter settle in my chest. For a brief second, I almost felt bad. Then I remembered the way Bradley had laughed off my panic, the way Eric had mocked me, giggled at my outrage, the way they had all assumed I would just take it. I took a slow, deep breath. That's not my problem. His face fell. He had expected me to cave. I stood up, grabbing my bag. You have one option. Sell the car. Return whatever money you can. If you don't, I'll take this all the way, and I don't care what happens to the house. His hands clenched into fists. Olivia, please. I walked out. I had given them an out. If they didn't take it, whatever happened next was on them. I didn't hear from my father after that meeting. No texts, no calls, nothing. I figured he was scrambling, trying to figure out his next move. Then, 2 days later, my mother showed up unannounced at Daniel's house. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying for days, and before I could even tell her to leave, she grabbed my hands. Olivia, please, she sobbed. Just drop this. I pulled away. Did you sell the car? She shook her head. Your brother refuses. I let out a bitter laugh. Then I guess we're done here. Tears rolled down her face. You don't understand what you're doing. Your father is trying to refinance the house to fix this. That's his problem. I cut in coldly. Not mine. She sobbed again, voice breaking. But we're family. I just stared at her. Family doesn't steal from each other. She didn't have an answer. That night, my father finally called. His voice was tight. We're selling the car. I exhaled, closing my eyes. Good. The dealership offered 20% less than we paid, but it's done. I shrugged. That's not my problem. He was silent for a long moment before he finally muttered, We'll wire you the money tomorrow. The next morning, I woke up to a bank notification. $43,000 deposited. It wasn't the full amount, but it was enough. Enough for me to walk away. Enough for me to never look back. I packed my bags, grabbed my essentials, and left my parents' house for good. Daniel's family took me in without hesitation. His mother even helped me set up a new bank account, one that no one but me would ever have access to. And just like that, I was free. A week later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Eric. Hope you're happy. We lost money because of you. I stared at the message for a second. Then I blocked his number. I wasn't just happy, I was finally at peace. A few days later, I took the money I had left and made a down payment on a small apartment. It wasn't as big as what I had originally planned, but it was mine. Truly mine. I didn't tell my parents where I moved. They found out through a relative, and shortly after, my dad sent a single, short text. Congratulations. My mother, on the other hand, sent a full paragraph about how families should stick together and how I'd regret cutting ties one day. I left her on read. And Eric? He never even got the job. Turned out he wasn't the first choice. The company went with someone else. So all of this, the stolen money, the car, the absolute mess they had put me through, it was all for nothing. I later heard that Eric had to buy a used car with his own money. Poetic justice. But honestly, I wasn't angry anymore, because for the first time in my life, I had my own life back. And I had learned a lesson I'd never forget. Blood doesn't mean trust, and I would never make the mistake of trusting them again. Story 2, 3 years ago, my life collapsed. My parents, the only family I had, cut me off. My husband, the man I thought was my forever, walked away like I was disposable. All because I couldn't have children. I built a new life after that. I moved to a quiet suburb, away from the suffocating disappointment of people who never truly loved me. I changed my number, blocked them on every platform, and swore to myself that they would never have the chance to hurt me again. And for 3 years, it worked. Until last week, I was out on a walk with my daughter, my beautiful 4-month-old baby girl, the child I thought I'd never have when I saw them, my parents, my ex-husband, Evan. They were stepping out of a house just 2 blocks away from mine. For a moment, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. My body froze, my grip tightening on the stroller. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my breath caught somewhere in my throat. Then, like some twisted joke, they noticed me. My mother's eyes widened, and my father's face twisted in shock. Evan? He looked like he'd seen a ghost. And then they were walking toward me. I should have turned and left. I should have walked away, pretended I didn't see them. But I didn't. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the years of rage I had bottled up inside me. Or maybe I just wanted them to see what they lost. Alex? My mother said hesitantly, her voice softer than I remembered. Is that your baby? I looked at her, expression unreadable, and then down at my daughter. Yes, my daughter. Evan exhaled sharply, like the wind had been knocked out of him. But how? I almost laughed. They had spent so long defining my worth by my ability to have children. The idea that I had managed to have a baby, despite them leaving me, despite them declaring me unworthy, seemed to short-circuit their brains. IVF, I said simply. Anonymous donor. My voice was calm, controlled, but inside, a storm was raging. My father looked uncomfortable, as if he didn't know what to say. My mother's lips pressed together, her eyes darting between me and the baby. Evan, however, took a step closer, his face full of something I couldn't quite place. I've been thinking about you a lot, Alex, he said. I've missed you. I let out a breathy laugh. No, you haven't. You missed the idea of me. You missed having someone who put up with your nonsense. He had the audacity to look wounded. That's not true. Oh, it absolutely is. My grip on the stroller tightened. You left me when I was at my lowest. You made me feel like I was broken, like I wasn't enough. And now, suddenly, you see me with a baby, and you want to come back? I made a mistake, he said, his voice low. I let them get in my head. He gestured toward my parents. I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. And what exactly did they tell you to make you abandon your wife? He hesitated, glancing at my parents. My father sighed, rubbing his temple. Alex, we all made mistakes, I scoffed. Don't. Just don't. You knew exactly what you were doing. You've always made it clear that my only value to you was whether I could give you a grandson. And when I couldn't, you threw me away. My mother started to protest, but I wasn't done. And you, Evan, I turned to him. You told me you loved me. You held me when I cried after every failed test. You swore we would figure it out together. And the moment things got hard, you bailed. Not only that you moved in with my parents after, did you think I wouldn't find out? Evan had the decency to look ashamed. he started, but no words came out. I shook my head, exhaling sharply. You know what? It doesn't even matter anymore. I spent years rebuilding myself. I found happiness without any of you. My father crossed his arms. So what? You're going to raise her alone? You don't think she deserves a family? I let out a bitter laugh. She has a family. She has me. And unlike you, I won't make her feel like she's not enough. Silence stretched between us. For a moment, I wondered if they felt even an ounce of the pain they had put me through. Then my mother reached out, almost pleading. Alex, please, let's talk. Let's go to your house. And I took a step back, cutting her off. I would rather invite a pack of wild dogs into my home. She flinched like I had slapped her. Evan tried again, his voice desperate now. I know I don't deserve another chance, but you don't, I said bluntly. None of you do. And with that, I turned around, pushing the stroller forward, leaving them standing there. For the first time in years, I was the one walking away. I don't know how long I walked before I got home. My legs moved on their own, but my mind was stuck back on that street. Stuck on their faces, the shock, the guilt, the sheer audacity of them thinking they could just waltz back into my life. As soon as I stepped inside, I locked the door behind me. Not that they'd try to follow me, but still. Old habits. I took a deep breath and looked down at my daughter, still sleeping peacefully in her stroller, completely unaware of the ghosts I had just faced. I should have been proud of myself. I stood my ground. I didn't cry. I didn't let them get under my skin. So why did I feel like I was coming apart at the seams? I sat down on the couch, running a hand through my hair. My heart was still hammering in my chest, the adrenaline not quite leaving me yet. And then my phone rang. An unknown number. I don't usually answer those. I've made it a rule. But something in me told me to pick up. Maybe I was still running on that reckless energy from before. Maybe I just wanted to see how far they'd take this. I put the phone to my ear. Hello? A beat of silence. Then, Alex, Evan. I could hear muffled whispers in the background. My parents. Of course they were there. I let out a slow breath through my nose. Lose my number. Evan, wait. Just hear me out, he rushed to say. Please. I could have hung up. I should have. But a part of me, maybe the part that still wanted answers, stayed on the line. You have 30 seconds, I said flatly. He exhaled like he had just been given a second chance at life. Look, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But you don't. I cut in. Another pause. Then, a quieter, more desperate voice. I didn't know what to do. Your parents, they got in my head, Alex. They made me think that maybe I'd be better off with someone else. Someone who could give me a family. I was weak. I let out a bitter laugh. Weak? Evan, you didn't just leave me. You moved in with them. You let them feed you lies about me while I was falling apart. And now that you see I have a baby, you think you can crawl back? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Silence. That's what I thought. And then my mother's voice in the background. Alex, honey, we just want to make things right. I blinked slowly, gripping the phone tighter. Make things right? Yes, she said. We all reacted poorly back then. We were just disappointed. It was a difficult situation for all of us. I closed my eyes, feeling my temper rise. Difficult for you? My voice was dangerously calm. She sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. We were expecting a grandchild, Alex. It was hard news to hear. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. So your solution was to abandon me? To convince my husband to leave me? To tell him he deserved better? More silence. That's not fair, my father finally said. We were hurting too. I shook my head, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. You were hurting? You? I was the one who had to sit in that doctor's office and hear that my body would never do the one thing I always thought it could. I was the one who had to come home and face the fact that my life was never going to look the way I imagined it. I was the one who lost everything because of you. I felt my throat tighten, but I refused to cry. Not for them, not anymore. We just thought, my mother said, hesitantly, that maybe if we gave you space, you'd understand where we were coming from. My grip on the phone loosened as I processed that. They really believed that. They truly thought I was the problem. I swallowed, my voice quiet but firm. Let me make something very clear to you. I have understood where you were coming from my entire life. I spent years bending over backward for your approval. and you threw me away the second I didn't fit your perfect image of a daughter. Alex, no, I snapped. You don't get to do this. You don't get to pretend you care now. You saw me with a baby, and suddenly I matter to you again. But I am not your daughter anymore, and you will never, never be a part of her life. My mother let out a sharp breath, and my father muttered something under his breath. And then, in the most bitter, cold voice I had ever heard from her, my mother said, "You're being selfish." I almost dropped the phone. "Excuse me?" I whispered. She took that as an invitation to continue. "You always made everything about you, Alex. Even back then, when we were struggling with the news, you expected us to comfort you. You never stopped to think about how we felt. You just pushed and pushed until we had no choice but to step away." My mouth went dry. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They weren't apologizing. They weren't even acknowledging what they did. They were blaming me. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was sharp, humorless, almost unhinged. "You're unbelievable." I could hear Evan shifting on the other end of the line. "Alex, don't." But I had heard enough. "Don't ever call me again," I said, my voice steady. "Not you, not them. If you do, I'll take legal action. And believe me, I will not hesitate." Then I hung up, and for the first time in 3 years I felt truly free. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time. The silence in my house felt heavier than usual, like the weight of the past had finally settled. I should have felt relieved, triumphant even. I had stood my ground. I had made it clear that they no longer had power over me. But instead, I just felt tired. I looked over at my daughter, peacefully sleeping in her bassinet. She had no idea how much history had just come crashing back into my life. I had spent so many years mourning the family I never really had, the parents who should have loved me, the husband who should have stood by me. And yet, after all this time, they were still the same, still selfish, still blind to the pain they caused. And now, they had the nerve to act like I was the problem, like I had been the selfish one. I let out a slow breath and closed my eyes. No, I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their mess. I had fought too hard to heal. I had built a life without them, and I wasn't about to let them ruin it now. I made up my mind right then. I was going to make sure they never got the chance to contact me again. The restraining order. The next morning, I made a few calls. I wasn't about to wait around for them to try something else. Evan had already proven he couldn't take no for an answer. And my parents? If they were anything like before, they wouldn't give up easily. I explained the situation to a lawyer, and thankfully, I had everything I needed to make a strong case for a restraining order. The past was already ugly enough. I didn't need it showing up at my doorstep, and I wasn't going to give them the chance to worm their way into my daughter's life. They had abandoned me when I needed them. They had broken me down piece by piece. And now that I had rebuilt myself, they wanted back in? Absolutely not. This time, I was the one shutting the door. Evan loses it. I didn't expect things to escalate so fast. 2 days after I filed the paperwork, my nanny called me in a panic. I had barely picked up the phone before she said, "Alex, I took the baby to my house. You need to come home now." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" "It's your ex," she whispered. "He showed up at the door. He was yelling for you. I told him you weren't home, but he just kept going. He tried to break in." I felt my hands go cold. "Did you call the cops?" "Yes. And I took the baby out through the back. I wasn't going to take any chances." I closed my eyes for a second, forcing myself to breathe. "I'm on my way." By the time I got home, the cops were already there, and so was Evan, drunk out of his mind. He was slumped against the porch, looking like a complete mess. His shirt was half untucked, his hair disheveled, and his eyes bloodshot. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I said the moment I stepped out of my car. He turned his head toward me, squinting. Then, to my utter disgust, he actually smiled. "Alex," he slurred, "you came back." I folded my arms, standing my ground. "No, Evan. I came to make sure you get the hell away from me." One of the officers cleared his throat. "MAAM, we're taking him in. Do you want to press charges?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." Evan's face crumpled. "Come on, Alex. Don't do this." I stared at him, unmoved. "You did this to yourself." They cuffed him and put him in the car. And as I watched them drive away, I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. I felt safe. The last straw, a few days later, I got a text from my cousin. "Your parents are talking about you to the family. They're saying you overreacted." I sighed. already exhausted. Of course they were playing the victims. I replied, "They can say whatever they want. I don't care." And the thing was, I actually meant it. I wasn't going to waste my time defending myself. Anyone who believed them wasn't someone I wanted in my life anyway. Let them talk. Let them spin whatever story they needed to feel better about what they did. It didn't change the truth. It didn't change the fact that they were never going to be a part of my daughter's life. Moving on. A week later, the restraining order was officially in place. Evan and my parents were legally required to stay away from me. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. No more looking over my shoulder. No more waiting for the past to show up at my door. It was over. I looked down at my daughter, who was lying on my chest, sleeping soundly. This was all that mattered now. She was my family. She was my peace. And I was never going to let anyone take that away from me again.